Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. I hope you're all well. I'm today's host, Rosie Tanner, and I work in the marketing department at Italic. I'm joined with Robert Milner, our operations director, who will be the presenter and demonstrator for this event. So before we begin, if you have any questions during the presentation, just if you could pop them into the question box that's in the control panel area, we'll happily answer them towards the end. So yeah, let's get started with everything you need to know about Microsoft Teams governance.
Great, thanks Rosa. Thanks for attending everyone this afternoon. It's a bit of a miserable Friday afternoon. Well, I hope you got something nice lined up for the weekend. So firstly, I'd just like to apologise. I'm carrying a bit of a cough and a cold at the moment, and I've got a bit of a sore throat, so apologies. I may cough a little bit, but I'll try and put myself on mute, and I may just be muted for 5 or 10 seconds just throughout this presentation, but I'll try and keep it to a minimum. So yeah, thanks again for attending. So this is just a quick webinar about Microsoft Teams governance and in particular Teams Manager. We just flick through what we're going to be covering in the webinar today. So today we're going to be looking at how you can standardize teams, new team creations by using templates. We're going to look at how you can use Teams Manager for approving new teams. So it's going to go through an approval process. We'll run through that. We'll look at Teams Manager governance policies as well and what you can do around the various governance policies that are available. So those are things like naming conventions, how you can force and standardize naming conventions for teams. Also, lifecycle management. We'll discuss how you can manage legacy teams and maybe teams that are no longer required. And we're going to look at policies, and those policies are about how naming conventions and how lifecycle management policies bring everything together into one big policy. And finally, we're going to be looking at the power of metadata. So as part of Teams Manager, you've got the ability to attach more information as part of a team, so you can prompt for extra metadata which you can use as part of the naming conventions and the policies within the governance policies of Teams Manager. So firstly, let's look at templates. So an initial problem you may face is how do you ensure colleagues and staff have a standard Teams layout? And one example is you may want to have a project, well, for every team or every project, for example, you may want to have a OneNote or a Planner file tab created. You may want to have a standard filing structure with every team that gets replicated out to every new team that's created in the future. Or you may want to ensure that every team, for example, has a private channel created. The solution is that Teams Manager can create templates by using existing teams which you designate as a template, and then basically copies those teams into a brand new team. So let me just quickly get into a demo. So let me just minimize this, and I'll quickly show you how templates works within Teams Manager. So this is my demo environment that I've already got set up, and this is provided to us by Microsoft. So these are already pre-created for us. So all these extra teams. So don't worry, this is not our tenant with all. I'm not missing like loads of notifications or anything like that. So what I'll do is I'll just click over onto Teams Manager. Now this is an app you actually have to add into Teams, and I'll quickly show you how you actually add it in. If you click on the 3 dots within Teams, you've then got a list of like almost recent apps, and if I click on more apps, you've then got a whole plethora of apps that you can add into Teams. If you search for Teams Manager, you've then got Teams Manager, and then you can go and install it. I've already installed it into this particular tenant, but the option for you should just be to install it. So let me flick over to Teams Manager, and this is the Teams Manager interface. And we've got various tabs along the top, one for chat. So this is where the automated Teams Manager bot puts things into the chat for you. And these are the outstanding requests. And these are the teams that get created. Oh, apologies, let me just sign in. The authenticate, yes. So these are the requests. There's just some permissions missing. That's okay for now. We can ignore those. So what I'll do is I'll just flip over to templates. So at the moment, I've got 2 active templates which I've already pre-created for this particular webinar demo. So I've got one template called Webinar Project Template, and I've got another one called Webinar Project Template, no metadata. And what you do to create a template is quite easy. You just click on Create a Template. We'll give it a name, so I could call this a project template, for example. And then I'll just give it a description. I'm just going to use the same description just for this testing purpose. And what it does in the background, it goes and creates a template, but in essence, all it is a blank team. And eventually I should just get a little pop-up in the right-hand side of my Teams client saying I've been added to a brand new team. But while we're waiting for that, oh, you can see it's just done that for me. If I click on that template, it'll take me straight into the template. So this is a particular template that I've already created. So in here, I've got a Files tab, and I've got a standard filing structure that I've just created because I want this as part of every team. I've also created a Project OneNote tab because I want that as well as part of every team. I've also created a private project channel. You may want to use this for things like sales or marketing, or maybe even like accounts, something that you want to hide away from people. So at the bottom, I've got here my project template. And from here, I can then start to manipulate this particular team however I see fit. For example, I might want to remove the wiki. I don't want that to be available on every team, so I'll go and remove it, and then maybe want to go and add a OneNote tab. I'll go and click OneNote. I'll create a new notebook just called Test Project Notebook, and then click Save. It goes and creates the new OneNote for me, adds it as a tab, and that's done. If at that point I'm happy with my template, and again you can basically customize this to your heart's content, but just for this webinar purposes, I'm just going to keep it fairly simple. So if I'm at this point happy with my template, I then flick back over to Teams Manager, go to Templates, and then I basically tell Teams Manager to go and update that template since the last time, because at the moment that particular project template doesn't have the wiki tab removed, and it doesn't have the OneNote file added to the top of the team. So I then go and click Save, and it then goes and updates that particular template. As you can see, it says now successfully saved template project template, and that template is now available for me to use to create a team. So then if I just flip over to Teams, and then I click on Create a Team, that will then allow me to create a team based on that template. Now, this particular test user that I'm logged in with is actually an admin within Teams Manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over to this browser, and this browser is logged in as Alex Wilbur, who is not a Teams admin. He's just a Teams user. So I'm going to just show you what it looks like from a Teams user perspective when you want to create a brand new team. It's exactly the same, but just showing it from a user perspective. So if I click on Create a Team, and then get a choice of what type of team this should be, whether it's private or public, I'll click it as private. And here you can see I've got the project template which we've just created, and I've got these 2 other webinar project templates which I've pre-created. So I'll click on that and click Continue, give my team a name. Let's call it Italic Webinar, just for the demo purposes. And again, I'm just going to copy those into those boxes, and from here then I can select another owner if I so want to. So I could select another person, and I can select other members as well. I think there's one called, Miriam Graham, and then I click Next. It's then saying, do you want to create this team with this particular naming convention? And it tells me loads of really nice information about what policies are going to apply, etc. Then click Create. What it actually does, it actually sends that off for approval. which then comes on to, I guess, to the next section of the demo. But just to give you an example, I've created this particular team here using this particular template, which is called the webinar project template. So if I just flip back to Teams quickly, here I've got this particular webinar project template, which this particular team has been created from, and I've not manipulated this in any way. Here you can see the filing structures come through. It's also got the project OneNote as it shows here. So we've got project OneNote, and here's the existing filing structure as well. So templates within Teams Manager is a very, very powerful solution to being able to make sure that that your teams get set up exactly how you want them. So let me just flip back to the presentation. I promise you it's not a death by PowerPoint. So let me just flip through this. And now we're on to the new team approval process where we're up to. So one of the problems that you may be facing is that you may be concerned with team sprawl, and you want to ensure that there's an approval process in place when creating new teams. So you may not want everyone within your particular organization to be able to just go and create a new team. So here we go. You don't want all of you to be able to create a new team. You're maybe concerned that you've got too many teams being created, and you want to just make sure that any new team just goes through an approval process. And a good example for that is you may want to just ensure that the title of the team is correct. You may want to ensure that there's maybe more than one owner assigned, or you may want to even ensure that the correct classification is being applied. And also you'll get, as an administrator, you'll get a notification to be able to approve or even reject new team requests. And the solution is that Teams Manager has a built-in approval process. So let's just quickly dive in and see what that approval process looks like. So if I flip back to my Teams Manager, I'm logged in as Megan, who is an administrator as Teams Manager. If I click on the Request tab, here I can see I've got one open request. So Alex Wilbur has requested a new team called Italic Webinar to be created using the project template. And if I just click on that request, I can then go and see what the team name is. I can go and manipulate the team name, or if there's maybe a spelling mistake, I can maybe go and correct that spelling mistake, or I can even say, actually, that is the wrong template you should be using. I want you to be using this template. I can also change the visibility of the team, whether it's a private team or a public team. I can add, as an administrator, I can add more owners or more members, and here I can also change the classification as I can see fit. I want to go next. He's then going to tell me what it's going to be, how it's going to be named, and exactly everything before I click approve. And I can add a comment as well to say, yes, this team has been approved, but you had the wrong template assigned or something to those effects. But I can also reject that team if I think it's not fit for purpose. So here we can say reject request, next. Your request has been rejected for this team. And if I just click reject, that's actually rejected that request. And within the chat here, for this particular user, this is Alex, who's just a standard user. Teams Manager sends this user almost like an instant message just to say your request was denied to create this team. So it's a really good way, sorry, excuse me. It's a really good way of notifying users whether their whether their team's request has been approved or whether it's been rejected. Let's just go and create another team just so you can see the whole process. So let's do create a team, private. We're going to use this particular template this time. We'll just call this Italic Webinar again. We'll give this maybe confidential. Create. Now, as an administrator, I still cannot create teams without there being a request. So as you can see here, Teams Manager says it sent me a card. and it says it's still a new request is waiting for approval. If I click that open request, I can actually, as an administrator for Teams Manager, I can actually go and approve my own request. So if I just click next, approve, Teams Manager keeps me constantly up to date, sends me another card saying my request has been approved. And hopefully after a few minutes, it should create a brand new team. Here we go. It's just said new team. Teams has added you to a team. And here we go. We've got a brand new team called Italic Webinar based on that existing template, all through the existing approval process. And here we can see as well, another pop-up's come up saying I've been added to a private channel. As you can see, it's not quite refreshed yet, but given a few minutes. Oh, there we go. Look, I've been added to that private project channel. So in the background, Teams Manager is busy creating the filing structure. It's creating the private project channel, which comes from this particular template. And also it's created the project OneNote file. So again, it's just showing you the power of templates and the power of the approval process. Just one thing to quickly dive into with regards to the approval process. If I just click on the settings tab, we do have within the settings this approval. You can also switch off the team approval process so that you can basically allow anyone to be able to go and create teams without there being an approval process. And it's literally just a case of just toggling that switch. But I can add multiple approvers. So in this example, Megan Bowen, who I'm currently logged in as, would get approval requests. Adele Vance would also get the exact same approval request. And whoever just happens to get to the approval first and either approves or rejects it, will sort out that particular request. So that's showing you the approval process end to end. So let's just dive in to the next section, which is how can you govern teams? So how can you govern new teams? So teams that are being created, you may find are not being consistently named or maybe have the wrong classification applied. So by classification, you may have the concept already within your tenant for sensitivity labels, so you can apply a sensitivity label to a team as well. You may want to just also ensure that people are not, for example, choosing like a public classification when you don't want any team to be classified as public. Maybe you just want them as internal or restricted or confidential. And you may also find that you've got some teams that maybe just linger around for longer than is required. So you may want to just do some due diligence in terms of just cleaning them up, whether it's to automatically delete them or just to archive them out of people's way. So you want to ensure that all teams maybe have a consistent naming convention applied. You want the owners of those teams to be notified, asking if that particular team is still valid. And you want to ensure that teams are created with a certain classification. And the solution is that within Teams Manager, you can create governance policies, mainly around naming conventions and lifecycle management. And then you basically create policy workflows which bring in naming conventions and the lifecycle management to ensure that those policies take effect when you create new teams. So again, let me just minimize this presentation and I'll just run you through some of the governance that is available within Teams Manager. So again, I'm just going to the settings tab, and within section 3 here, I've got governance. So I've already created some sample naming conventions and lifecycle management policies just as part of this webinar. But again, you can, the world's your oyster really in terms of being able to create your own naming conventions and lifecycle management policies. So here I've got an example one. So I've just created a single naming convention. So when you create a brand new one, just basically give it a name, you give it a description, and then you run through exactly how you would like the various tabs and the teams for naming conventions. So when you create a brand new team and it's got in the template a OneNote tab and a planner tab, you can control those naming conventions so that once Teams Manager's creating those tabs from the template, it's given it the appropriate naming convention. So in this particular instance, I'm actually using some metadata, which is part of the next section of this webinar, which just talks a little bit around metadata. So in this instance, we're using the project number from that metadata, and then I'm putting in a dash, and then I'm using the team name that the user specified, and then another dash. And then as part of the suffix, I'm not actually setting anything. So here you can see what it looks like. So project number dash team name dash, and then the actual OneNote file name. And I've just took the exact same naming convention for planner. And for the actual team name, I'm just using the project number dash and then the name of the team that the user has specified. So going on to lifecycle management. Here I've just got an example lifecycle management notification policy. Again, when you're creating a brand new one, you just give it a name, a description. And on this particular one, I want to notify the owner of the team every 30 days should this team be sent for archiving. And if they don't want it sent for archiving, then it automatically extends the life of that team for just another 30 days. And then after 90 days, if the user does not respond to that expiration notification, it'll automatically archive it after 90 days. But not to worry if the team does get accidentally archived, if someone is maybe on long-term sick or something like that, you can easily just go and unarchive it from within Teams Manager. And you can also have an automatic delete function, but as you can see here, they give you a big danger warning that once you delete a team, it goes into the recycle bin for 30 days, and then after that, it's permanently deleted. So that's why they're saying just use that with a little bit of caution. So classifications, right? Classifications are actually static, and you actually create these one time on your tenant using some PowerShell. And the PowerShell is actually provided in the help menu within Microsoft Teams Manager. So once you create these, it's just a one-off, and you can actually tweak these to however you see fit. But unfortunately, at this moment in time, the only way you can get classification to pull through into Teams and to Teams Manager is by creating them using PowerShell. So policies bring together your naming conventions and your lifecycle management. So for example, here I've got an example policy which brings through the company naming convention, which is what I just showed you, and also the lifecycle management policy into this particular policy package. And then what happens is on your policy execution tab, you then define almost a rule set to say that for this particular company policy package, I want it to apply on Teams creation, and I want it to only apply on Teams where the classification is internal use. And what I've also got is I've got another policy package where I'm preventing any teams from being made public. So in here, I've created it with the exact same naming convention, the exact same life cycle, but here I've got the classification turned on to force. So it will always force this particular policy to apply the internal use policy onto the team, and I'll show you how that looks in a second. But what I do is again have a policy execution package which applies that particular policy package, which only says if the classification equals public. Apologies, I've got a bit of a cough going. So let me show you what that looks like. So if I just go into Teams, I create a new team. Let's just create it as private, project template. Now let's do webinar project template, no metadata. Again, let's just do webinar. Now, if I try and select this as public and next, I won't get any notification on my side, but what it should say is the policy being applied is prevent teams being public. Now, the end user can actually see this policy title, but because they're not in essence creating a new team, they're only requesting a new team, it shouldn't make hopefully too much difference. So if I then click on here, we can see I've been sent a request to create a brand new team. And then I go to here. As you can see, it still says there the team is being classified for public. Next. Where's the, as you can see here, it's actually, where is it? Sorry. It's actually changed. There it is. Sorry, the classification. It's actually going to change the classification to internal use, and is applying that particular policy, which is preventing a user from being able to create any team with the public classification. I click approve, and just to hopefully prove that this is working correctly. Here we've got the Italic webinar. It's creating the private project channel, and as you can see there, it now says internal use rather than public. So that particular policy is firing, and it's preventing me from being able to mark this particular team as public, which you can then use to define how those particular teams are used with other policies on the Microsoft backend. So that is Teams governance, and apologies, I'm having to go through these at kind of breakneck speed. And if you do have any further questions outside of this, happy to answer them, but I'm just conscious of how long it takes to get through some of this information, so apologies. So the next one is the power of metadata. How can we prompt for and use extra metadata as part of the Teams creation process? So we can prompt for things like standard information, or what you may class as standard information, which is things like maybe the project number, project manager name, or you can anything that comes to your mind that you may want to store as part of the team and then start to use in as part of your governance for Teams Manager. So like I say, you can use that metadata to influence governance and policies. And the Teams Manager has the ability to store metadata as part of the team and to prompt the user when creating a team to provide a value for that metadata. So again, let me just come back into my test client. So here I'm actually as a standard user, Alex Wilbur. If I go to Teams Manager, if I click on Teams, let me just create a team just as a standard user. If I click private, and I'm going to use this webinar project template, and I've got one below it which is exactly the same, but it's got no metadata. But if I click on this one, this should prompt me for metadata. So again, let me just fill this in with just some generic information. Let me just put that as 2 so we don't override the other one. So here it's prompting me to fill out some metadata. So again, I could just put K87421. And the project manager is actually an employee lookup, so we'll actually go out and look up people's names within the tenant. So here I can select Megan Bowen. And again, it's just coming up with this usual screen. We're going to create this team with the following information. Click create. It sends a request. So if I just minimize that and go back into my administrator client, you can see Alex Wilbur's created a new team request. Let me go into there and let's go and approve it. As you can see here, now the metadata is pulling through onto the approval process. So for example, if he's maybe put the wrong project number in, I can change that for him or her, whoever's requesting the team. Click next, click approve, and that will go and create that particular team with that metadata. And it's very easy to add metadata onto an existing template. So the metadata is attached to the template. So if you click the 3 dots, there's this option called set fields, and that's where you set the metadata. If there's another template where it doesn't have it already set up, you can create a field. Just give the field a name, project number, for example. You can select the type of field it is, whether it's a text or a date, whether it's a person or a drop down or a checkbox. You can set that as required, so they have to enter something in that field. I go and click update, and then the next time I come to create a team, based on that project template, it will then prompt me for that information. So again, let me just quickly show you. I won't actually create this one this time. As you can see there, it's now prompting me for a project number. But because I've got an existing policy which says to use that particular project number as part of the team's creation process, it's actually appended the project number at the start, and that's all part of the governance policies. That's all part of the governance policies as part of Teams Manager. So again, let me just quickly show you, because I'm conscious that we're nearly out of time. If I click on apologies, naming conventions. No, it's the naming convention, sorry. Here we've got the teams, and here we've got the metadata for the project number, which just tags the project number, which is prompted for when a user creates a brand new team, just at the start of the team name. And that's a wrap up for metadata. And again, I do apologize for going through some of these fairly quickly, but it's kind of hard to show all the best bits of Teams Manager in 30 minutes. So I do appreciate your patience today, and thank you for listening. And does anyone have any further questions? Rosie, is there any questions that have been asked today at all?
We do have the one question, but like you said, I'm a bit conscious for time as well. So I think I'll email that person directly.
Okay,
so
great.
thank you for that, Robert. That was really insightful. Hope everyone felt the same. So our next webinar is on Microsoft Teams telephony. If you're interested but not able to attend, I do recommend registering so we can send you a copy of the actual recording to watch in your own time. You can find the details on how to register on our events page on the website. If you are interested in Teams Manager, a 14-day free trial is currently available through the Teams App Store, so you're able to download it from there. And if you've got any further questions or anything that you'd like to ask, please do email us at info@italic.co.uk. So just before I end this for today, there is a short survey. If you wouldn't mind just completing that, should only take a couple of minutes. And yeah, thank you very much for attending, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.